Good morning. I want you to consider the numbers of people involved in some particular endeavors. For instance, if you're having a transplant, lung, heart, whatever, you're going to have more than 15 people in that operating room. There are going to be a lot of people working and taking care of the equipment and you and all of those things. If you were Neil Armstrong walking on the moon in 1969, NASA had over 400,000 engineers and technicians and scientists to make sure there was that one small step for man and the giant leap for mankind. And this Saturday, Notre Dame is opening after 5 years in the fire. And what's taken place between then and now, 2,000 experts have been involved. There have been, not people, but 1,300 stones that have been used to repair walls in some of the vaults. They've had to clean 8,000 pipes for the big organ. They have 3 new bells. And they raised donations that equal $891 million. And we know that that represents so many people that were making their contributions, large and small. Now, step back to 1959 and the movie set of Ben-Hur. There were 100 wardrobe fabricators working on the costumes, 200 artists, 10,000 extras. I was thinking, yeah, that's before the time of all the computer generated, they had to have the real people. So they had 10,000 people that were just the extras, and 200 camels, and 2,500 horses. Then in the next year, Spartacus was made. They had 10,000 actors, but 8,000 were in the Roman army who were actually Spanish soldiers that they used and dressed up as Romans to be in the movie. And then jump forward to 2012, The Dark Knight, one of those Batman movies that they can't quit making. Come up with new ideas. But they had a football game that they had during that movie that they did use people for the football game, and so they hired 11,000 extras for this fictional football game. But all that to just say, look at the numbers of people involved to make one great thing happen, depending on what you think is great. But each one bringing their expertise, paying attention to their little portion, making sure it's done right and carefully and safely. And for all those tasks, just bringing their gifts and their talents together. And it really wasn't just the numbers of people, but it was the expertise, it was the gifts that they brought to that particular endeavor. They're all communities of a sort, if you will, and that's what we're looking at today. And the title of this lesson is called Freed for Community. I think that's what it is. Now that I'm thinking, I'm like, is that what it is? Freed to Form a Community, I think was the actual title of it. The Israelites, what we're seeing, Kim reminded us last week in her principles, they are becoming the people of God. And they've endured a lot of hardship, no food, no water. They have had to get the mindset of, I'm not a slave anymore. I'm free. I've been rescued from that. And they're having to learn to live and to work together. God has provided for them in a lot of creative ways. So they had those challenges. They've got new challenges ahead of them as they get united into this community. They've got to learn how to live together, how to work together, how to love one another. So we're going to look at just 2 sections, Joshua's victory and the power of prayer involved in that, and then Jethro's visit and the power of community that we see established during that time. So Joshua's victory, the situation is they're headed down the Sinai Peninsula, going to Mount Sinai. That's where we're going to be in the next lesson. But there's an enemy that comes, it seems like, comes out of nowhere. This is that Amalekite tribe from Amalek, and we're wondering, wait, who are they? What's interesting is that Amalek originally was the grandson of Esau. And you may remember, Jacob, Esau. So this tribe is nomadic. They kind of range all over that desert. And part of the way they make their living is they just raid other people's stuff. And so they attack. They were known to be very vicious. Their attacks were surprise. And what they did was like really just the lowest thing you could do. They attacked the back of the group. Who's at the back? The people that are tired, the old people, the little children, the people that are carrying all the luggage. So they would attack from the back and take all the loot. And they had domesticated the camel so they could swiftly attack. They used that swiftness to make those surprise attacks. And they really killed for pleasure. So they are an awful group of people. But as they attack, God is going to prepare this group of slaves to be able to fight against them. And so we look at first the leader, and it's Joshua that's chosen. Moses has looked over his millions of people that he's got with him, 2 million possibly, many of those of fighting age. And Joshua has stood out, and he chooses him to be the leader of this first battle of the Israelites. I don't know how they're armed. I don't know if they know how to fight, but Joshua is going to lead them. He is a courageous, bold man, probably between the ages of 20 to 40 at this point. He does live to be 101. He's one of only 2 that get to go into the promised land after the 40 years. He is just a stellar person, and he will lead the armies of Israel over and over again. And Moses gave him this amazing opportunity, if you think about it, to be the leader of the army. And it made me think about people that can see potential in other people and ask them to do what maybe they never thought they were capable of doing. I don't know if that's happened to you. If somebody looked at you and said, "Would you do such and such for me?" And you're like, "Whoa, how did my name come up on that?" But I love it that those people that do see potential and give opportunity. And it's just, Joshua said yes. And so that's just a reminder for us. If we're asked to do something hard, if somebody thinks we're capable, we might consider it in a positive way. So anyway, he becomes the military leader. So the leader's chosen. Now comes the battle plan. We've got Moses. We've got his brother Aaron. It seems like Hur is Miriam's husband. Scholars think that he's the brother-in-law. So here's this family united on the front, and Joshua's going to fight on the ground. Moses and these men are going to be up on the hillside watching. They're seeing. Moses has his staff with him. This is the staff that turned the Nile to blood. It's the staff that went to a snake. And so he's raising this. That's just the reminder of the power and the presence of God. Their plan is that they'll be watching the battle as it's going on down below. And so Moses and Aaron, they're on the top of the hill. Part of the plan is that Moses lifts up his hands. And it says in I guess it's in 17:16, at the very end of it, it says, "A hand upon the throne of the Lord will have war with Amalek generation to generation." But it seems that this is a position of prayer. And so as he's holding this rod, he is praying. And commentators say he's praying continually. He's got his hands lifted up. And of course, we know when you get your hands lifted up for a long period of time, they get really tired and they start going down. Good for Aaron and Hur to see, oh no, he needs to sit down. So they bring that big stone for him to sit on. He's still got his hands up in the air. And when they're up, we're winning. As they go down, we're losing. So again, Aaron and Hur are attentive to the need, and they take his hands and make sure they're lifted up so that the battle is eventually won. The picture of prayer is such a reminder of the power of God in prayer. It is mysterious. We don't know how prayer and God's will and our desires all fit together. But God tells us to pray, and he wants us to be involved and concerned. And so Joshua ends up overwhelming this enemy. And God tells Moses, write it down. He didn't want anybody to forget this amazing first battle. And then he says, and recite it. Those are all the words that are given at the end of 17. Write this as a memorial in a book. Recite it in the ears of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven. Then they build an altar, just another way. Remember this. Don't forget it. And then they have a new name for God, Jehovah Nissi. The Lord is my banner. That reminder of the rod before them, the power of prayer. And I love what one author said about the banner. It's a symbol. It's a reminder that that they need to depend upon God for the victory. And one writer says, it's a signal pole around which an army can, I like these words, rally, regroup, and return for instruction. And that's what Jehovah Nissi is for us. We go to him, we regroup, we return for instruction. Just like those three words, rally, regroup, return for instruction. And that banner is the reminder, the Jehovah Nissi. So we know that we trust God, he'll fight for us. This was a real battle on a real battlefield with real armies fighting. But it's a reminder that as the descendants of Esau, the descendants of Jacob are battling, that this is the seed of the serpent that is battling the seed of Eve and wanting to wipe them out and annihilate them. We've seen that already in the past with Pharaoh. We will see it again. There is this desire to get rid of this family that the Savior of the world would come from. But when their help was needed, God supplied the help. He was that Jehovah Nissi. But here's the principle. Spiritual victory is made possible through prayer. Hands raised, hands not raised, head bowed, eyes closed, kneeling, standing. Spiritual victory is made possible through prayer. And though this battle was on a battlefield, we know there's a battle in our heart. There's a battle in our minds. There's a battle going around us that is not of flesh and blood, but is against principalities and the powers of the spirit of the air. That's the battle that we fight. And we don't fight with guns, knives, spears, whatever. We're fighting with the armor of God, which includes the truth. It includes righteousness. It includes the fact that we're saved by grace and by Jesus. It includes the power of the Word of God and prayer. All of those are the powerful weapons that we fight with. And spiritual victory is made possible through prayer. That's our pathway to working with God. So I wonder, what's your battle that you're fighting? Depression, disappointment, frustration, resentment, bitterness. All those things are battles that we might fight. Current battle in your head or your current need, finances, friends, help with studies. So like the Israelites, we face an enemy, but we're not called to fight on our own strength. We have powerful weapons and a powerful God to fight with. How are you using those? Or are you becoming familiar with the weapons that you're given? I think in this section, we don't want to miss some flashes of things to come. We have Joshua, who's the warrior. We have a warrior that fights for us. It's Jesus. And then we saw Moses, who's interceding. He's praying continually for this battle. And we have one that ever lives to intercede for us. And the Spirit that prays for us even when we don't even know how to pray. And then we have Aaron and Hur, those people that come alongside of us. See a need, get into action, bring a rock to sit on, help you raise your hands. So this battle is over. It's a victory. But Moses has some other challenges waiting for him. His father-in-law visits. The camp is quiet. The people are going about their business, working with their children, feeding them, taking care of things. They've been out of Egypt just for a few months. It hasn't been long. And Moses has taken the responsibility of the people. He has the vision for them. He's the one motivating them. He's the one teaching them about God. And of course, he doesn't know it, but this is going to be a long time that he's going to be working with the people, 40 years. So God, in his graciousness, brings his family back to him. In our lessons, we kind of skipped over his wife and sons that were with him and then were sent back. And that was before he met with Pharaoh, and so maybe that was just for the safety of her and those sons that they were sent back to Jethro, the father-in-law. But Jethro, I think it's worth remembering, he and Moses had evidently developed a really close relationship. Moses had worked with him for 40 years as a shepherd, and so they knew each other really well. So Jethro comes, and he brings Zipporah, the wife. He brings the sons. Here we're finally told about the sons' names. One of them means foreigner, stranger, and it's because when he was born, Moses was in Midian with Jethro, and he says, I'm a foreigner in this land. And then the other son is Eleazar, and his name is God is my help. And so Moses, even at that time, is saying, God is helping me live. So those are the sons, the wife, Jethro. They all come together. And in Exodus 3, you may remember that Jethro was considered a priest of Midian. There's some, discussion about, is he a priest of the one true God? Was there knowledge about the Abraham's God there? And so some people see that he was like a pagan priest, and he comes to this point and has this recognition and understanding now of the one true God. Others say, well, he seems to have been a priest just with limited knowledge at that time. But when he comes to Moses and they have this meeting, first of all, they come together. It's very Middle Eastern. There's this bowing that goes on and this gentle greeting. And, oh, how are you? How are the children? Blah, blah, blah. Meeting in the tent, which, animal skins on the floor and goat and camel around and maybe large enough to have a divider to have some privacy. So they meet, and Moses takes the opportunity to explain what's happened. Because surely Jethro's wondering, wow, what's been going on with you? He had gotten word of it, but he gets to hear it straight from Moses' mouth. And Moses tells him in verse 8, Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake. That was a great story, right? All the hardship that had come upon them in the way. They'd had that hardship, but how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro's response is he just is so delighted. He rejoices with them for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel and that he delivered them from the hand of the Egyptians. And then Jethro he said, blessed be the Lord who's delivered you out of his hand. And he goes down in verse 11, he says, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. So if he didn't know that before, now he sees, wow, this is one powerful, omniscient, omnipotent God. And then he joins Moses in offering a burnt offering and sharing a meal together. Those things that believers love to do together. But I love how that sharing of stories, this is what God's done for me. Listen to how this has happened. What a boost that is for all of us when we say, hey, let me tell you what God did. This is an amazing thing. And so for that, it was just a time of great rejoicing and of sharing. I know now God is greater than all the other gods. So the next day dawns. Moses goes to his normal place and begins his normal day, which is a really long day. So in verse 13, we read that he sits to judge the people, and the people stand around him from morning till evening. And he goes on, when Jethro's like, what are you doing? What's happening here? Moses says, he explains what he says, because the people come to me to inquire about God. And when they have a dispute, they come to me. I decide between one person and another. I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. So there's way more than just listening to a problem and saying, oh, pay him $50, or oh, bring the cow back. He's teaching them about God and about laws and statutes, and he's giving an organization to this community. They are around him. I don't know. I thought about you that have young children and how they're just around you all day long and morning till night. It brought that picture. But Moses has all these people around him. So he speaks to God and then he teaches the people. And Jethro, who loves Moses, watches carefully. And he had asked him, what is this you're doing? Why are you sitting alone? Now all these people are all around you. And as Moses tells him, then he's thinking through, he's evaluating, judging a situation, understanding that Moses, he's the linchpin, he's the key to the whole community. And I think Jethro understands this man needs longevity. This man needs to have strength to go for the long haul. And so he gives him some really sound advice. He says, first of all, he says, well, this isn't good. This is terrible, the way you're doing this. And so he has this idea of let's break it up and let's take, let other people decide some of these lesser issues and let the important issues be yours. So there's this marvelous plan of delegation. Moses needed to be saved for the hard, important things. And then in the meantime, he has these people that he can train and help them. So he's developing this leadership within the community that's going to be of such importance to run such a large community. So the leadership is developed within them. And of course, Jethro didn't just come with the problem. He came with the solution. Get these groups together. But then he tells them, this is what you need to look for in your leaders. They need to be good men. They need to be men that won't take a bribe. They need to be just men. They need to be, he gives him all kinds of qualifications, if you will, men who fear God, and give them that responsibility. So he is just such an incredible help to Moses. Moses, on his part, doesn't resist that. I don't know how you are about when people try to tell you stuff, but sometimes you're like, please don't tell me that, or I know better, or whatever. But Moses listens carefully. He realizes this is a good plan. And of course, Jethro had said, take it to God. And so I'm sure Moses spent time praying about it and realized this is a good plan. And for Moses, we see that most meek of men, he's humble. He receives the advice. He's very teachable. I know our lessons went into that a lot about what does it take to be teachable? What is it like to be a listener? And so Moses is not defensive about it. It seems like perhaps he's realizing this is such a good plan. Why didn't I see this before? Maybe that's what he thought. But I think the task was so big, and sometimes we can feel this way. There's so much to be done. Just do it. And don't take the time to assign anybody else the task. But he readily accepts the advice. And good for him. He's 80, he's 81, he's still teachable. He wants to learn, he wants to do things better. And I just think we know the Bible teaches that's the kind of people that are wise. They take good counsel, they seek the Lord in it, they recognize they don't know that they know they don't know everything, so they're open to what people might help them with. So Moses not only needed to delegate, but he's training these new leaders, and he resists that. No, I'm doing it best. It's me and God. We're in this. I'm doing a good job. He doesn't have any of that. Just a very humble person. And the result is that this strategy really does help the people. Imagine now, they're not standing in line all day long. They're getting the help they need quickly. They get some advice. They can go on their way. They're with people that are trusted. So they're feeling secure, like my problem's been handled. And they're learning to trust God as well and learning to live together as God's people. So lots of lessons from Moses and from Jethro as he gives this new perspective to Moses. So as a result of Moses' wise leadership and this delegation, taking that wise advice, the Israelites are becoming this healthy community, living and working together. So that's really an illustration of this principle. God's work is best done in and with a spirit-filled community. God's work is best done in and with a spirit-filled community. A Christian community, a fellowship, a local church is made possible because people are giving and taking and learning and teaching and taking care of one another. I feel like our church is so good at taking care of one another. I've seen over and over again people who have responded quickly to needs. And I couldn't help but think about when at Theda Busby's funeral, Ralph told the story about how she would, at one Sunday, she was just so tired and she just really wanted to sit down. And Ralph was like, well, go ahead, sit down. She goes, no, if I do, I'll have 15 casseroles this afternoon at our house. Because that's the response that this church has. And I know I'm looking at people who have been quick to be the ones that have helped. And many of you have been on the receiving end of some of those things. I did ask some young women in the church, I'm like, how has the church really helped you? What have you seen? And they've mentioned babysitters that were even prepaid. They've mentioned numerous gift cards that are provided, numerous meals that are provided, people willing to be on call when there's an emergency. A lot of people have young children at home. They've got to leave to take one to the hospital. They don't want to take all these with them. So they've got people they can call. Can you come over at the drop of a hat? Yes, there's been that answer. The gift of time and friendship, the willingness to walk with people in and out of season. Our pastors' wives have been grateful when their husbands' ministries have been affirmed and thanked for that, been encouraged. Lawns have been mowed, homes have been remodeled. I mean, there's an amazing thing that have been done. And I love what one she said. The thing is, there's so many people that they haven't said, if you need something, call me. If you if something's happened, if you need help, give me a call. They're like, no, you know what? When somebody saw a need, they didn't even ask, they came. And they came with a meal, or they came with a cup of coffee or Kleenex or whatever was needed. They were there. And one of them says, it's been the most beautiful thing of seeing the hands and feet of Jesus, and it's reminded us, our family, so beautifully that we're loved by him. The thing is, we all need help at some point. Like I say, I know I've been the recipient of a shoulder to cry on and other ways that have helped us. I hope you have been too. Everybody's able to give some kind of help, whether it's a note, a text, a phone call. Nothing is minimal. It's all helpful. And I think even just coming here, you're a part of this community, and you've been willing to get involved in the lives of other people and let them be involved in your lives. I do wonder, do you need help? If you do need help, let people know. Let Kim know. Let the pastors' wives know that you need help. And because I wonder sometimes, do we even know that you need help? Do people know that I need help sometimes? Because there are people here that want to help. And I think there's, what I liked about reading that list is it sort of stirred up some ideas of ways I could help. I was thinking about, this is a small thing, but I had gone into an early morning Bible study. It was dark, and one of the gals had left her lights on. So I get the license plate, and I walk in. I'm walking in with a friend, and I'm like, you left your lights on. And my friend is like, Mary, give me your keys. I'll go turn them off. I'm like, oh. I mean, I was like ashamed that I'm just like, go take care of your own deal. Where my friend was like, let me do it for you. And I know that's a funny thing, but it's made a big impact on me that don't just see the need, do something about the need. I love that, remembering that sweet friend doing that. You know, when we looked at all those different communities at the beginning, the makers of the movies, the NASA people putting together all the things for the moon landing, thinking about an operating room, it wasn't just the number of people, but again, it was that they added their bit of knowledge and understanding to it. And so I see all of us so much more important than a moon landing or even a lung transplant are the people of God working together to care for one another so we'll grow in the Lord, so we'll understand Him, so we'll trust Him more. And then that the world will know that's what Christians do for one another. I want to know about their Lord that motivates them to love the way that they do. God gives the church its people to be the hands and feet, the eyes and the ear of the Lord, to hold each other's arms up, to bring that stone to sit on. And so for the Israelites, God has used prayer for them, great leadership for them. He's established some laws and some communities, some leadership that can mold them into that community that can eventually be a blessing to the whole world. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you would help us be your eyes and ears, hands and feet in a remarkable way within this church and our city and the world. I pray that you'll guide us by your Spirit to do our part and that we would be faithful to listen to how your Spirit leads us to be that kind of help and develop that kind of community. I pray in Jesus' name.